Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us. In case you're curious where you are, this is the webinar for choosing engagement methods that work. It's going to be hosted today by Go Vocal as well as the Davenport Institute for Public Engagement. And before we kick off, just a little bit of goal setting. Really what we're looking to do today is help you break the habit of the one-off engagement methods, whether those are public meetings or surveys, and really become more intentional about tailoring your engagement plans and your strategies to your unique community, project goals, and internal capacity. All right. Go. And before we kick off with some intros, just a couple of housekeeping items. So we encourage you all to be active in chat. This is an engagement webinar after all, so do engage with us. Start by saying hello and where you're joining us from today. We also encourage you to use the Q&A tool. We have Andrea Conway from the Go Vocal team who will be helping us monitor that, and we will save lots of time at the end of today's session for questions. And also no need for screenshots. We will send an email with all of the slides and the recording so you all could catch up later. Wonderful. All right, so a couple quick intros. I'm excited to introduce my fellow panelists today from the Davenport Institute for Public Engagement and Civic Leadership, which is based at Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Public Policy, which is Robert Jordan's beautiful background there. Davenport, if you're not familiar, is a recognized leader in promoting healthy public engagement to strengthen local democracy. And I'll introduce my peers today. Robert is the Assistant Director at the Davenport Institute, as well as Adjunct Professor at the Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. His background is in public affairs and local government and has been really honed in the past 2 years on public engagement. We're also joined by Amanda Rotella, who is the Economic Vitality Manager at the City of Mountain View, California, as well as Davenport Institute Advisory Council member. Amanda brings over a decade of public sector experience focused on economic development, as well as community engagement. And she's also a former Go vocalist back in our Citizen Lab days. And I'm Sarah Horton. I'm the Director of North America at Go Vocal. My background is in civic and community engagement. I'm spending the last 8 years in GovTech, and I oversee our key government partnerships and operations here in the US and Canada. And a quick intro to Go Vocal for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We've been leaders in the community engagement space since 2015, and we are proud to power the participation platforms of over 500 local governments worldwide, including some of the innovative names that you see here on the list. And I'm curious if any of them are in the audience, but here you'll see Salt Lake City, Kansas City, Toronto City Center, and many more. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to talk about kind of public engagement, difference between public engagement and communication. So here we go. So the foundation of, or I guess first off, who is familiar with the difference of communication or public engagement? Does anybody have an idea? Anybody familiar with working in public engagement? Feel free to drop it in the chat. You can kind of see here. If not, it's totally okay. That's why we're here. Cool. So the foundations for public engagement, the difference between the two is public engagement is for community members to have an opportunity to influence the decision-making or the outcome of a process. That's bringing residents in at the beginning versus at the very end, trying to save a project kind of thing. The difference is that there's a dialogue occurring between the community and the government, not a one-way communication like communications can be. So then we can go to the next slide here. What public engagement is not, it's not selling the public on a project. It's not trying to get their buy-in. It's getting their input and helping them kind of know what's feasible, what's possible, and what's realistic with the parameters that you have to work in. It's not convincing the public to do X, Y, and Z, or convincing them to support this or not support it. It's not a meeting to complain. It's hopefully not going to turn into a giant venting session. Which if it does, that's okay. You can always pivot and move from there. And it's not going to be controlled by elected or staff. So they're there to learn as well and be a part of the process. The goal is to have everybody have a seat at the table. Hopefully it's not held in a council chamber. That's kind of intimidating for folks sometimes to show up to a space that they're not familiar in, that they might not have ever been to or see as kind of a position of power. You want to go out into the community. That's going out to the churches, the religious institutions, the rec centers that people already are attending. So you want to be able to get good input from folks in spaces that they're already comfortable in. And then we can go on from here. So kind of the main difference here, I alluded to it a little before. Public engagement is a dialogue, not a passive, like one-way communication. And so it's built upon relationships. You want to get buy-in from the community. You want to build that relationship where people can see you and be a recognized face or see others that they recognize to feel more comfortable. It's focused on including the community in the decision-making process. It's collaborative, as you can see in our little picture here. They're sitting at round tables. Everybody can talk to each other. The setup is important for meetings like this, that everybody feels like their voice can be heard and that they can influence the outcome there. It requires follow-up. It's not a one and done kind of thing. It's not just, all right, like we did this one meeting and it's time to just make a decision. Not everybody can attend that one meeting. We'll go into that later in Sarah's portion on how to differentiate if it's in person, if it's online, if you do hybrid. People have jobs, people have multiple jobs, they have irregular hours. They can't always attend your one meeting at noon or at 10 or whatever it is, if they're working. And so focus on listening and incorporating input is another key of this as well. It's how you can like help take their feedback and have it influence the final decision making process. Communication on the other side, it's which I'm sure most people are familiar with. It's a social media post of this is what the project is. It's more just telling others how it is. It's not as collaborative. It's more one way. It's more think of it more as marketing versus getting proper feedback. There's only so much you can get from a comment feed on an Instagram or Facebook post that can be useful. And so then next here, so why does it matter? Communication can be mislabeled as engagement. Both can build trust within the community. We don't want to forget that. But it's often with a different purpose. So communication is more informing, engagement is partnering and coming together with them. Understanding the distinction can help you be a more effective leader in your community, and set expectations more appropriate, both internally and externally. So this is important to get decision makers on board internally. That could be the city manager, your council members, any department heads, because you really want to have it ingrained in we're partnering with the community here. We're not going in and fixing things. We're coming together to fix a problem together. And then externally, it builds trust. People don't see the government as this big bad thing coming into our space. They see them as coming together alongside them to work towards a common goal, whatever that might be. And then I think next here. So 5 questions to ask before developing a public engagement plan. These are kind of just ways to frame your mindset before you go into it. Can can the community members actually influence an outcome? If everything's already set in stone, don't bring them in just to tick a box. That will make people mad. They'll feel used, and that's just not a good way to build relationships for long-term projects that you might have going on. What else is going on that could impact or influencing the community, region, state, country, world? That could be different political things going on around influencing local stuff, funding sources, um, just different things like that. Just kind of take a read on kind of the temperature. You'd know best for your community what they're feeling. And then who needs to provide input for your process. If you want to target people specifically on who might have the most valuable input on something. You don't, if you're building a park in one neighborhood, you don't want to ask people like 10 blocks down the road that might not ever go to this park or across town their input on this park in this neighborhood because they're probably not going to use it. So get people that actually would have a vested interest in a successful program here. And then do you have the resources? Engagement's hard. It's time consuming. It can be expensive. It's do you have the resources to do it? Do you have the staff time? Do you have the finances to do it? Have people usually working outside of normal working hours to get good feedback from folks is really important there. And then are the decision makers on board? I kind of alluded to this before. If you do all of this great work and you get great feedback from the community and everybody's singing Kumbaya, hopefully, on a project and that they can get everything going, and then you pitch it to council or you pitch it to your city manager, whoever is the final decision maker, they're like, why'd you do all this? Like we already made up our mind, I thought, and then it's different than what we thought it was going to be. So you want to have everybody on board to make sure it's as smooth as possible. Engagement's messy. It's not always going to be smooth, but as best as you can grease those wheels along the way would help for sure. And then next we have the IAP2 stages of public participation is kind of what we alluded to in the 5 questions here. This is just kind of how you go throughout the process of engagement. So inform, consult, involve, collaborate, empower. Inform, it could be more of a communication style. This is what the project is. These are our parameters. Consulting, how do you get the feedback from folks? Involve, working directly through them, through the people there. How can you get their feedback? And different things like that. Collaborate is very similar. How do they actually like what parts of it do they want to change or not change? And then empower is actually giving it over and like to them and being like, okay, this is your thing. How can we help you achieve what you want here? How can we come alongside and achieve this together? So another good graphic here is kind of it shows the different degrees of complexity and then also the impact. So you see inform, consult, involve, collaborate, empower again. As you move to the right on the degrees of complexity, it gets harder to get more people involved, get everybody on the same page, and then potential impact on the project increases as well as you work up. So inform is low and low, and then empower is probably the most like high impact, high complexity that you can get there. And then next here, the promise of the stages. So inform, consult, involve, collaborate, empower. Informs more that comms. You have your fact sheets, websites, open houses. Consults, the public comment period, surveys, public meetings. Involve is workshops, deliberative polling. That's more of the round table discussion, big whiteboards, all that good stuff. Collaborate citizens advisory committees, empower citizens juries, ballots, delegated decision making to citizen groups that way. So that's kind of a very quick run through of public engagement, difference between comms and engagement. And then next up, we have Amanda Rotella, who is one of our fabulous advisory council members here at the Davenport Institute as well. Amanda?
Yeah, thanks so much, Robert, and thanks for kind of providing that real comprehensive sort of baseline for the conversation. I'm going to share a little bit about a case study, a project that I actually worked on as a way to sort of serve as an example for some of the concepts that Robert talked about and what Sarah will speak to after me. So this was a project that I was handed when I worked for the city of Santa Cruz. And there's a lot of in between, but essentially where it started was this project that was sort of waffling, like there was no internal like cheerleader for it. The community didn't really know much about it, but the ones that did know about it were against it. And so when I took it over, was highly controversial. There was tons of vocal opposition. There were multiple council members who had come out publicly against the project, and lots of media attention. And I was able to shepherd it through multiple council votes, a subcommittee process, a really robust community engagement process. And really, the community engagement process was critical to project success because we did have such an uphill battle with this project. And one of the kind of just a quick overview of what it was. You can see from the photo here, there's a lot going on. So it was a new library, consolidated parking into a parking garage, and then affordable housing on top. So this real mixed use project in the heart of downtown. And this project was really important because it met a lot of the community's needs. We had been hearing about all of the needs the community had for their library. And so we really needed a new modern library space. We had, obviously, housing is really, affordable housing is a big issue in California. And so being able to bring affordable housing project, critical. And then lastly, we had heard from the business owners about the importance of having accessible parking, that it really is critical for their businesses. And so as we're seeing development of public parking lots, because parking is not the highest and best use of land, being able to consolidate into a garage was really important for the downtown economy. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that's really critical as you're thinking about any project, and was critical in this project, is right-sizing the approach. So if we look at that IAP spectrum that we had, because of the eyes on this project, the level of controversy, the level of importance, we were really working close to that end of that scale where we were trying to engage people at a really deeper level. And so some of the key components that really came out that I'm just going to speak through today to kind of talk a little bit about different elements of the process was, one, providing clear opportunities to provide input, ensuring that we reach diverse voices, hearing from new voices. Transparency was a really key tenet, and then reporting out and reflecting back. So I'll quickly touch on these to kind of share a little bit more about how we approach this. So next slide. So clear opportunities to provide input. So it was critical that the public understood when they would be able to provide input, and where in the process that would happen and sort of what the results would be. And so really ensuring, like, okay, from the very beginning, people understood this is our process. This is where input's going to be provided. This is when decisions will be made. And in some cases, we even did what I call sort of fishbowl decision making. So when I was working with the council subcommittee process, we actually created a spreadsheet where we took all the feedback we had heard from the community, put it into a spreadsheet, and then rated the different options based on how much they met the needs of the community. And you can see sort of a little snippet of that here. And when the subcommittee brought their recommendations to the larger council, they brought with them that spreadsheet. So it was very clear how they had come to a decision. And because there was just a ton of mistrust, ensuring transparency at all levels became really critical. And so again, showing how decisions were getting made, how input was being taken in and directly applied to and making those decisions, was a way that we were trying to build that trust with the community, and really keep everything as transparent as possible, so that we couldn't be told that we were messing with the process, that there was this backdoor work that was happening. Next slide, please. The other thing that was really critical was bringing in diverse voices. So we were hearing from the same people over and over again, but we knew, because of the multifaceted nature of this project, that there were so many other voices that needed to be part of this conversation. And, as you can see from the slide, the graphic, I guess it's to the left here, we disproportionately hear from those who are of higher income levels, higher educated. That's just, this is, I believe, a Pew Research graphic here. And that's just who we generally, universally, we being the public sector, hear from. And it's who we were hearing from as well. And so we worked really hard to actively engage those unheard voices. So the first thing we did was mapped out our community. You can see that graphic there that says stakeholder and community engagement. We created an exhaustive list of our stakeholders. And then we had to figure out how to reach them. So a big part of the community that we knew we had to hear from were for young professionals. We're people with young families, with our non-English speaking community members. The picture there is actually a picture of me. It must have been during COVID because I have a mask on, where I went out with a service provider who provided meals, provided groceries to a portion of the community. It was low income, non-English speaking. And I went out there and partnered with them and brought my big dot booth there to engage those community members to ensure that their voices were being incorporated into the project. So I had to go out, leave City Hall, and meet people where they're at. And I did a lot of that in this project. And it was really critical to bringing in those new voices. Next slide, please. The next thing I did, so I talked about the importance of transparency, and it was critical to have a project website. So before I was at the helm, there was information everywhere. As you can imagine, there was information on Public Works about the parking, the housing team had some of it there. The library has their own separate website where they had information. And there's the difference between information being accessible, like it's out there somewhere if you can find it, and really making it, or available and making it accessible. And so I worked really hard to put all of the project history in one place, all of the outline of what was going to be happening throughout the process. Anytime anyone had a question, you send them to a single point of information and you make sure that all the information is there. I worked really hard to keep things updated, ensure that I was putting, summaries of activities on there, everything. I wanted it to be, again, in the spirit of transparency, but also accessibility. Having a single source of information was critical. I also would do things like these video updates. You can see the screenshot there where I was putting out, little snippets of updates so that if you had 2 minutes to get a quick update, you could watch the most recent video. And then again, did summaries of all the activities that was happening. And again, transparency was critical, and having a single place to send people, critical. Next slide, please. The next piece that's really critical is reporting out and reflecting back. So one of the great things about having a single place of information like a website is you can report out to the community from there. So let's say you're doing a survey. Great, you go to the website to take the survey, and then you come back to that same website to see the results of the survey. And I'm a huge proponent of, if you're going to do a survey, make sure you're sharing the results with the community. Make sure you're posting it somewhere, you're following up, you're reflecting back to them. This is what we heard. That's important for transparency, but also for this, again, for community members to see how their input is impacting the process. The other thing that I did during council meetings at critical decision-making milestones is I actually reported out sort of in a narrative form the feedback that we had heard from the community, because again, the community kept saying to us, you're not listening to us. And so by having opportunities to reflect back to them everything we had heard in a decision-making process, they could see, okay, they heard me. I heard my input echoed back to me. And again, this was a part of how we were building that relationship with the community and building that trust and transparency. Next slide. So I will say, one of the great things about this process, we had this really robust process with all of those tenets I quickly went through. And one of the most powerful, I think, impacts was that there was this one community member who was very critical of the process, very critical of me. I mean, we had multiple email exchanges back and forth, and she was really paying attention to everything we were doing. And when I left the city, she actually sent me this message, saying that she really felt that we had developed these cordial relations. And, I saw her a couple of years later and she gave me a big hug. And for me, this really demonstrates that that I was able to create a process that not everyone maybe agreed with the outcome, but they respected me and they respected the process. And that's the best outcome you can hope for, because you're not going to get everyone on board. But if you can get people to respect your process, that is the biggest win that you have control over, right? Where you can create a really defensible process. And with my last few seconds, I'll do the last slide. I do just want to share project status that just this month, this project broke ground. So I was able to build a really robust, defensible community engagement process that served as the foundation for this project to be able to continue on in its process. And it's going to happen. So really, really excited about that. But you can see, again, in a right sizing capacity, this project required the big behemoth. Smaller projects are going to require different scale of engagement, but this is what it could look like in a real kind of intense way. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Amanda. That was a really inspiring case study, and one that I'm sure a lot of us will closely follow after this. Also, I just wanted to quickly jump on, like that right sizing approach that really resonated, and not only making things accessible, but making those actionable as well. So thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing that. All right. Now that we fully understand that distinction between comms and engagement, we do want to dive a bit further into how the methods that you choose directly impact your results, and how we might tailor those based on the different topic that we're engaging on, the audience of our community members, as well as the project goals that we have, with the ultimate end goal of really driving that impact. So, building on the ladder of engagement that Robert showed us earlier, this really illustrates how some of those different methods can align with the varying levels of influence that you're trying to achieve, engagement that you're trying to achieve with the community, and just to drive home that really understanding this framework and how it can support your goals will really help you be more effective. All right. And when it comes to selecting the right method for community engagement, when we're trying to match it to the topic that we have at hand, not all methods are going to be as effective for each project type. So to give a couple of examples, we work with a lot of budgeting type projects. Those are really ideal for, say, a prioritization type survey or a voting exercise, a place where people can really allocate resources and make decisions on funding. When it comes to zoning projects, for example, making sure that you have interactive components, whether those be mapping or visual tools, that will really help all of your participants explore the potential changes in their community, the trade-offs that will be made, and provide targeted feedback. Say for parks projects, spatial tools are really nice. Anything with idea generation capabilities that really allow for that creative, open-ended input as well as community discussion. And then when it comes to policy or issues-based projects or any of those topics that are particularly spicy in your communities, those might thrive in more kind of dynamic interactive formats, maybe things that are happening offline in workshops or brainstorming sessions, in a setting that really encourages diversity of ideas and more collaboration. Here on the slide, the thing I wanted to illustrate for you all is that there are different formats of feedback that we receive, or that y'all receive as staff. This one on the left can be a pretty typical kind of survey response that leaves you as the person that has to make sense of this guessing a bit or maybe filling in gaps. And then on the one on the right is really map-based kind of an engagement method that's what we like to call governance ready. So this is something that provides very visual, specific feedback, and allows you to kind of spot clear trends as they emerge. All right. A couple other elements that you should consider are also whether you want to engage synchronously or asynchronously, whether that's in person or digital. And the topic or kind of the nature of the issue definitely does matter here. Like I mentioned, some topics are best discussed in person, and those direct conversations might result in clearer feedback. Also consider what type of input are you looking to receive? Is this broad ideas? Are you looking for very specific feedback? Are you looking for qualitative or quantitative? And making sure that you are reaching that right audience, kind of to Robert's point earlier. Ultimately, that method that you choose should allow for that right depth, whether you're trying to go broad or specific, and ultimately facilitate the actionable results that you're looking for. Another thing to consider is your audience. So you know your community members best. What are they comfortable with? How can you meet them where they are, similarly to what Amanda did? What are the community-based organizations that you know you need to partner with? That exercise of mapping your stakeholders is a great kind of foundational exercise to do. And, for example, if you have a big digital divide, you should definitely mix some of those offline, kind of handwritten components, make space for voice-based feedback, and then also provide those digital options for the folks that can't come in person. All right. And the thing I think that's really important to drive home here as a key takeaway is we want to build positive cycles and a positive culture of engagement. And it's really important to note that the more intentional you are with the method selection, the more meaningful the contributions are that you receive back. And those richer insights are often easier to act on and make decisions on as a local government. And that will be visible to residents and participants and make it more likely that they'll come back and engage with you in the future. If you still have doubts, if you're not sure, and you'd like an easy kind of tool, answer some questions, we do have this that we'll link out afterwards in the resources. And this is GoVocal's engagement method selector to really kind of help you make sense of which tools might be best. And in addition to choosing the right methods, it's also important that the various efforts that you have speak to each other and are building on each other. So we kind of want to warn against this like fragmented spaghetti on the wall approach. Fragmented tooling, fragmented outreach does typically result in pretty fragmented insights, and that disconnection makes it really hard to get the full picture and tell that compelling story when it comes to making decisions at the end. Also, you want to make sure that you're creating a good experience for your residents. Don't over survey, don't ask all the big demographic long list of questions right at the front. Make sure the engagement process feels organized, consistent. You're not duplicating previous engagement efforts from the past too much. That will help increase trust in the process and increase their willingness to come back and engage with you again. Also, you got to keep in mind your capacity, to Amanda's point of right sizing. As you do engagement, keep in mind that with limited capacity, you want to make sure that you do have the right tools and that you're making the best use of your resources and your internal capacity as well. All right, so designing participation as a process. What we've talked about already is that these one-off initiatives really tend to fall short when it comes to making that lasting impact and designing a plan like what Amanda did in the city of Santa Cruz. That's comprehensive. You have a goal, you have various phases and sequence of activities that will really help you to keep the conversation going, especially on projects that last longer than a year and a half, etc. I think, again, this is a good note about platform and having an approach that's streamlined. You do want to take advantage of if there's ways to kind of automate tasks, track engagement, and also close the loop with residents. And I'll also end with a case study. I think this says it better than I can. And this example of good process design comes from the city of Allen, Texas, who is a client of ours. They had an engagement project for their comprehensive plan update that just closed a few months ago, but it was a year and a half long project, and they had 7 major phases of engagement. And then some of the things that they really did well was they designed a really detailed, comprehensive, but also visually compelling project landing page, making sure that information was accessible, that it was all in one place, they could come back to the same place for results, that there was really clear context on what was being asked of them and kind of directed their feedback. Another really great thing they did was blend online and offline engagement methods. They deployed a really creative mix of kind of recruitment and outreach strategies. A couple examples would be printing QR codes to the survey on utility bills, so reaching people that might not have been engaging with the city in the past, and also doing pop-ups at school district events, so ways to engage young families and parents. I'll also note that the City of Allen did partner with a planning consulting firm for this comprehensive plan update, like many of y'all do, but they were able to reduce the overall project cost because the city's public media and outreach team already had built that internal engagement muscle, kind of from the strategy perspective as well as the tech perspective. And I'll leave you with a quote from Mark Herbensade, who's the Director of Development at the City of Allen, really speaking about how kind of taking this phased approach and blending online and offline engagement methods really changed fundamentally his approach to engagement moving forward, kind of moving away from that idea that massive town halls are the way to go and really reaching people in smaller groups for richer conversations, as well as kind of providing a 24/7 destination for folks to participate asynchronously as well. All right, so that brings us to the end of our content. I did want to turn it back over to Robert and Amanda, if you all wanted to provide a final word or any final takeaways.
Yeah, so the main thing is just to make sure if you can do an engagement process, make sure you list everything out, at all the people you need to talk to, different things like that. And if it's not feasible, if a comms plan would work or not, what would that look like? Is kind of my 2 cents. The big difference between comms and engagement, people get tricked up on sometimes. So, Amanda.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just say, the right sizing piece is really important, but the other thing to think about, in addition to what's your capacity, what are your resources, what are your goals, how like controversial or not a project might be. The other thing to really think about is the broad scope of what else is happening in your city, because you can't do a super crazy robust process for every single project you're doing. So really thinking about what are going to be your big, your big engagement processes, and then what are some of the other ones where they're going to have smaller engagement. You really want to set yourself up for success. And I know that we all, community engagement is one of the things that we layer on top of the work we do, the other work that we do. So I encourage you to think about, what your resources are and what else is going on. And I will say, steal, borrow, copy what others are doing. Look at what other engagement processes you've participated on, that you've seen sister city partners organizations do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there are a lot of great tools out there that can help you. So I encourage you to kind of look at what else is happening around there and model, right size it for your community. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. And I'll just close with one final thing. I noticed we have a ton of practitioners in the office, in the audience, kind of at that director or manager level. And I do want to stress the importance of really winning political buy-in and top city manager, mayor buy-in for engagement. We all three of us are super passionate about this, but I know it might not be top of mind at the leadership level for all of your cities. So take a data-driven approach. Like measure where you started, measure where you are today, even if it's not exactly where you hope to be, or it's not reaching your ambitions yet, because as you work on this, your results will show how important this is. And I think that's really powerful at the leadership level. Awesome. Let's jump into Q&A. We have a little bit over 5 minutes. And I think I saw some in chat. Andrea, do you want to read those out for us?
For sure. So the first question was from Lael, Portland, Oregon, and they're asking, did you track the website traffic to see if people were accessing the materials you were posting? And that was a question for Amanda.
Great question. And if we had more time, I could talk about this project for a couple hours, and I have in some cases done presentations that are way extended. But yes, one of the other things that we did as part of our report out Reflect Ad is we showed all the data as well. So how many people were accessing the website, how many people took the survey, how many people showed up to meetings we were having and webinars, and how many stakeholder meetings did we host, and how many one-on-one meetings did I take? How many emails did I respond to on this specific project? I was really comprehensive in showing any touch point. I wanted that to be part of this sort of data package. And not to jump ahead of you, Andre, but there was another question that asked, like, did we develop a what we did report to share with how decisions were made? And yes, we had, as part of the package that went to council and was public to the community, there was a whole report out of both the data and then again, that narrative piece of this is what we heard on the topic of parking. We heard we don't have enough parking and we have too much parking. We heard, and shared both types of that report back. So the really heavy data and statistics, and then, the narrative side where we were again reflecting out, this is what we were hearing. And sometimes it literally was, we were hearing opposite things, but it's part of the bigger picture. And it's what our councils have to wrestle with. They need all of the information so that they can make decisions. Yeah.
Next question is
Oh, good.
is also from Lael. I think it's a question for Sarah when you were talking about City of Allen. And they asked, how did you bring digital opportunities to their homes and commutes?
How did the city of Allen bring digital engagement?
Digital opportunities to their homes and commutes.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think they did a great outreach campaign to drive people from the city website to the Go Vocal platform for engagement. But I think speaking to this point was going to local events where people are not necessarily already plugged into city channels, going and meeting them where they are. So using kind of that tablet-based approach or bringing paper forms that you could then later get manually or automatically transcribed into the system, those kinds of tools, but really going to local events and meeting people where they are.
And then we have a next question from Nicole Story, and they're asking, how are you evolving how you measure engagement success from quantity to quality? And I think that maybe is for anyone who wants to answer.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in. I think it's an important shift in mindset, or important shift in sort of how you're approaching engagement. Because I agree on the quality side, shifting from that place of like we just want to get as many people into the process as into the process as possible, and in some cases that is, if that, depending on your engagement goals, quantity can be what you're looking for. But in the cases where sometimes you might be trying to engage new community members and bringing in new voices, a smaller number of people from a new group, from a new demographic, a formerly unparticipatory demographic, can be really of high value. In the example that I shared, where I was doing a partnership with a service provider to reach a population that hadn't been engaged, I probably spent 3 or 4 hours out there, and I maybe talked to 10, 15 people. So it was a super small number of people that I engaged in, but I found that I considered that to be highly successful, that we were able to, again, bring in this new demographic who hadn't participated before. And so again, that was a quality focus over a quantity focus. And I think it really just depends on the outcome that you're looking for and the kind of input that you need.
And then we have a question from Parrish, and he's asking, can you elaborate on the reflection step? Parrish, if you want to maybe, if it's for someone specific, let us know in the chat.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're talking about sort of the reflect out and report out, and yeah, I will say a couple of things. So in addition to, reflecting out on to city council at key decision points, it was also part of all the information that ended up on the website. We tried to work with our media partners to have them report out, what we were hearing from the community, the parts of our process as well, and how they were being incorporated in. Happy to answer a little more about sort of the reflection piece, but I will say, having a report that essentially details all the steps that you take and all the input that you received throughout the process was how we approached it, because there were multiple engagement processes that happened because we kept going back. Council would move forward and then say, oh no, we want to do a little more engagement. And so there were a number of stages. And so it was like, okay, stage 1, this is everything we did. This is everything we heard. Stage 2, everything we did, everything we heard. And in a project like this, all of it layers on top of each other. And I think it's important to show that in the report out and reflect out piece.
Awesome. I think we have time for just one more question. So I'll take this one from Carla Davis. Robert, Amanda, if you have anything to share with this, did you collaborate or have you collaborated with any internal departments across the city? Utility, 311, anything to expand your reach?
I mean, I'll say we didn't engage with utility departments. The city of Santa Cruz had like a water department, and we talked about, oh, could we like send things out along with bills? But there's specific rules, at least in California, about how you can use those lists and mailing out to people. So by nature of this being a mixed use project, I was coordinating across the city, but we didn't really use any like different or unique engagement channels like that.
Wonderful.
It's a good idea. If your city allows it, any way that you can jump on, outreach lists within your city, definitely do. And actually, I saw the stakeholder piece. I'll just say one last thing. We were really engaged with the Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Association, and then there were a number of advocacy groups that popped up around this project. And we were definitely leveraging their contact list, their communication channels to get information out. So I highly encourage you to kind of think about who can amplify what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you for that,
Good
Amanda.
groups. Neighborhood groups is another one too.
Yeah. Wonderful. I want to turn it over to you, Robert, for just a final last word to the audience before we close for today.
Yeah. So if any of this interested you or you want to learn more about it, my portion of the presentation was just a tiny portion of our certificate program that we offer here at the Davenport Institute. It's 6 weeks long, it's virtually, and it's 6 2.5-hour sessions. As you can see the dates here for the fall or spring. Check out our website if you want to learn more. We offer a discount for agencies sending 3 or more participants as well.
Well, yeah, highly recommend that CERT program for any practitioners. And then also from the Go Vocal side, we will be in San Antonio at the IAP2 conference at the end of September. We'll have a booth. We'll be speaking there specifically on the Voices of Inclusion track. So please do come see us. And that is all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining, and we hope to be in touch with you all very soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.